I'm Jason, and welcome you to the Take Heart podcast. In a world where it's easy to lose heart, may this podcast be an invitation for you to find calm in the chaos. Together, we'll tune in with our hearts and distinguish the signal of Christ from the noise of Christianity. Heart-to-heart connection begins with the simple practice of paying attention. As we pay attention to our own hearts, we expand our capacity for relational awareness within our interior landscape. The practices of curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love will kindle a deeper connection with others. C.O.A.L, C.O.A.L. C.O.A.L is an acronym developed by Dr. Dan Siegel, and he uses it to remind us of what it looks like to live a heartful, soulful, or mindful life in receptive awareness and presence. The big picture, in order to be part of this relational revolution, really is to ask ourselves this big question: what parts of us need to be revolutionized for us to experience sustainable and safe heart-to-heart connection? In order for heart-to-heart connection to be possible, we must first be connected to our own hearts. And in order to be fluent in the language of the heart, we need to learn how it speaks in emotions. What is your relationship to your emotions like? We can't deeply connect with one another if we don't go deep within ourselves. If we don't know how to be present with our emotions, we won't know how to do that for one another. Growing in relational awareness begins with this first step of being curious with what's going on in the inside. If you don't know how your feelings are impacting you, how can you know how they're impacting those around you? Healthy relationships mean that to be relationally aware, we need to be emotionally aware. And to be emotionally aware, we need to show up to our emotions and be willing to respond to them. In order to listen with your heart, you'll need to listen to your heart. And we do this as the first step of going inward. We notice what's going on in the inside of us by simply being curious. This is the start of what is called inner attunement. I learned this definition of inner attunement from one of my coaches, who said that inner attunement or self-attunement is the practice of being curious about what's happening on the inside of you from a kind and non-judgmental stance towards yourself. This is a personal check-in, because before we check in with the heart of someone else, we explore checking in with ourselves and till the soil of our own hearts by paying attention. Openness. Life is hard, but 4 things will make life even harder: a hard heart, refusing to grow, not letting go, not loving yourself. When your heart is hardened, you're losing joy and you lack presence. When you refuse to grow, you're losing perspective and you lack freedom. When you do not let go, you're losing power and lack fluidity. When you're not loving yourself, you're losing desire and you lack passion. I was inspired by young Pueblo's triad of hard things, and I've added the hard heart. Opening our hearts isn't something that many of us have learned. In fact, to be strong in this world, You may have been shown how to keep everything above the surface and barricade the real you from being seen. And when our attention to the heart is misdirected toward the intellect, it's not long before we become victims to the stories that we hear in our heads. Listen, I get it. Relationships are hard, but until we learn to have a relationship with ourselves, we will remain superficial or unstable with others. When we're not capable of showing up fully in our own person, we'll hardly show up for deep connection and presence with other people. You can look to the scriptures that repeatedly warn us about having a hardened heart. Yes, life is hard, I know, but having a hard heart makes it that much harder. Is your heart open or closed? Acceptance. Growing in relational awareness begins with being curious, having an open heart, and it continues with acceptance. But once your heart is opened, wow, there's stuff in there that you might not have seen in quite a while. Untended gardens tend to be overgrown. And starting to notice and becoming aware of all of these things that are going on inside of you can be daunting and overwhelming all at once. This is where acceptance is vital. It's as if someone has cleaned off your pair of eyeglasses and you begin to see more than you knew was there. In addition to opening your heart wider to your inner landscape, there's an illumination to the interior world that you may be noticing old rooms down there that you haven't entered into for quite a while. And you may feel like you need to clean up those rooms before God accepts you. But the good news is really the good news. We are already accepted in the beloved, all of us. And not only the bright and shiny parts of us that we think please God, but even our brokenness in those weak places. And the challenge might be to think that we need to enter into those doors and sort it all out before God will be glad to be with us. It's not about our performance. Religion lies to us and is fueled by separation, shame, distance, delay, and illusion. God is a genius, and He's made provision to the problem of performance by creating a very special and safe place for us. Where? In Christ. Because we're in Christ and Christ is in us. We're bone of His bone and flesh of His flesh. We're one with God, and He is one with us. How does it make you feel that God accepts you just as you are? If God can befriend you, even in your worst condition, do you think you could accept His assessment of you? Why not agree with His opinion of you? He's called you friend. Can you call yourself friend? If He can befriend even the darkest places within us, could we begin to accept all the parts of us? From inside our house of belonging, aka the Father's house inside of us, Father, Son, and Spirit emerge from our deepest and darkest place. Grace first. We are embraced in a mystery that unfolds most easily to an open heart and an open mind. He accepts us as we are. Trusting in the posture of being accepted in the beloved, we can deeply rest in being one with Christ. Acceptance is the key towards relational awareness from the inside out. When we learn to truly befriend ourselves, we can truly befriend others. Next, love. Growing in relational awareness begins with being curious, having an open heart, continues with acceptance, and then we discover that relational connection finds its apex in love. Why does this matter? Well, love matters because maturity matters. Brian Zahn once said, the biblical test case for the love of God is love of neighbor. And the biblical test case for love of neighbor is love of enemy. How can we love our enemies when we haven't learned to accept and love the enemies that are in here? Those uncomfortable, bristly places that perhaps we've offered resistance. Becoming more relationally aware is a significant shift in the way that we want to shift Christian culture. For lots of folks in the unhealthy part of Christian culture, we've created a culture of self-abandonment in the name of the one who promised to never abandon us. And what has that led to? Fractured communities, ruptured relationships, and burnt out believers. For example, how many of you have experienced being sacrificed over to someone else's ministry agenda? Or perhaps you've not only been the victim, but the villain. Have you served so long and hard that you not only neglected your own heart, but those around you? In my time as a pastor, I used to often say, what does it profit a pastor to gain the whole church, but lose his own family? While there's the command to love God with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbor, the rest of the verse contains the secret sauce. It tells us the secret of how. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if we're unhealthily consumed with an outward focus, there's very little or intermittent nurturing going on the inside of us. Young Pueblo says it this way: to love others without first loving yourself is to build a home without a strong foundation. To love others without first loving yourself is to build a home without a strong foundation. Now, if you're like me and you grew up in Sunday school, you remember J-O-Y, Jesus, others, and you. I wonder how that fits in to this equation. We simply want to agree and align with God's perspective of us and to learn how to cherish and nurture those parts of us that are calling for our attention. One of the tasks for maturity is learning how to receive. How are you at receiving? I like how the Irish poet slash philosopher John O'Donohue describes coming home to oneself. Somewhere he speaks or writes this: when you learn to love and learn to let yourself be loved, then you come home to the hearth of your own spirit. You're sitting by the fire inside in the little cottage of your life. You're warm and sheltered. And you're completely at one in the house of your own longing and belonging. John continues, if I was asked why are humans sent to the earth, I would say that we are sent here to learn to love and also to learn to receive love. Sometimes those who are on a spiritual path are very beautiful people. And he says this in his Irish accent. I always love people who are searching for truth in life and who do so gently and compassionately, I feel so much at home in this kind of community. Once the mind is awakened and the soul awakens in the search, you can never go back again. You are always then inflamed with the fire of this beautiful longing. Continuing. Sometimes people who are on a spiritual path bring an incredible generosity to the world and to the lives of others that they come to know. They're very generous outward and they give and give and give. But sometimes they're very mean to themselves. It's no good being a generous giver if you are simultaneously a mean receiver. You need to be able and to be generous in receiving the love that is around. Sometimes when you work with people, one of the sad things that you often encounter is that you see people who have a desperate hunger for love. And you see also that the love is very near them. But there's some door closed through some hurt, a door slammed shut within the mind. And the love is outside waiting to come in, and they're powerless to open it. We must be very attentive in order to be able to receive. Boris Pasternak said that when a great moment knocks on the door of your life, very often it's no louder than the beating of your heart, and it's very easy to miss it. Thank you for that excerpt, my friend John O'Donohue. Have you been missing these moments knocking on the door of your heart? God has given us the ability to cultivate the interior landscape of our hearts. And one of the tools He has given us is the power of paying radical attention. And when we practice inner attunement and inner compassion, we can build the home in our hearts on the solid foundation of our belonging with God. Are you an overgiver? Are you able to receive? Are you a mean receiver? Consider this your invitation to slow down and bring a gentle awareness to those places in your heart that are asking to be nourished. Listen, what's the alternative? When our inner belonging is not grounded, how can we build a bridge of belonging to others? One that doesn't blow up. When we do not generously pay radical attention to ourselves, our distraction results in disconnection. Disconnected from ourselves, disconnected from one another, and perhaps parts of us that are seemingly disconnected to God in our awareness. What is the heartbeat of God wanting to tell you today? The bottom line is that expanding our capacity for relational awareness, it begins with widening and deepening our interior landscape. The practices of curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love, C.O.A.L, will cultivate a deeper connection with others, kindling the fire of your own belonging with Father, Son, and Spirit, and making your heart His home. You'll save yourself unnecessary heartache from building your heart in the home of others. I leave you this medicine in the masterful words of poet David Tennyson. Where to build your home. I built my home in the hearts of others, trading my treasure for a seat at their table, placing my best self on the shelves of their acceptance. This was a mistake. They walked away. I was no longer welcome. I found myself homeless, empty, wondering if I had anything more to give. Take heart. Take heart, God whispered. You have plenty more to give. The emptiness came to let you know you simply built your home in the heart of others instead of your own with me. To build your own house of belonging within your hearts requires inner attunement and inner compassion. As we practice listening to our hearts, we can practice listening with our hearts. As you check in with a curious, open, accepting, and loving manner, then you can extend this etiquette of the heart to others. Take care of your heart. It's the only one you have. May your heart be loved and deeply listened to today. Listen to your heart. We really appreciate you listening to this episode of the Take Heart podcast. Are you longing for deep and meaningful spiritual community? Do you desire heart-to-heart connection with God and others? How can we take heart again so that we can give heart to others? We'd like to invite you into a community of practice, a people of belonging and bliss. More than mere talk, we practice. Why does practice matter? Well, practice matters because maturity matters. If you can't lead yourself well, how can you lead others? Consider joining us for an intro call at luke10.com, lk10.com, to explore what a safe and secure experience looks like to build, develop, and implement skills of relational connection and emotional intelligence so that we can become vibrant and joy-fueled families of Jesus. Jesus, Master of Hearts, said, "I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world." May you continue to take heart one podcast at a time.